Are you working on your author career but struggling to get that first book published? Does the goal of being an author seem too lofty? Or thoughts of having multiple books and making a full-time living are as fantastical as living in Cinderella's castle? Welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where aspiring authors can be heard. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have gotten their foot on the author career path. Hear what they've done to get there and where they want to go now. Settle back. It's time for a bit of inspiration and advice. Come listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
So you've been writing for a couple years, but you're still kind of just starting. You haven't released, 6 books every month or anything like that. So you've still got your first one, but you do have some things done. And you said before that you went to Rockapock and learned, I like people. It helps me. It's my thing. And because of that, you've got a co-author, and everything you were just talking about was co-author, it seemed.
Yep.
So obviously you learned something about yourself. Tell us a little bit about what that was like. I mean, everybody wants to write, but then you're like, well, I like writing with people.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, to be honest. I mean, like, I have my own personal projects, but I don't find them as fulfilling, or I don't know the right term off the top of my head, but there's something with working with another person that not only keeps you like accountable for what you need to do, but it keeps me motivated to keep going because there's that other person that's reliant on it getting done. In terms of like where I'm at, I still have that day job. I still, have that time that I have to commit to the day job. And so being able to work with a co-author, being able to have certain tasks and then hand it over to someone so that they can perform their task is something that has definitely changed the way that I write. It's improved the way that I write because I'm basically getting someone that's looking over what I'm writing and I'm looking over what someone else is writing and finding ways to improve that, which, I mean, that has expanded to editing services, which I now offer as well. And it's all kind of coming into full circle of this. Working with people is exactly what I like to do. It's exactly where I feel most comfortable in, and it's where I feel like I get the most growth out of.
Nice. What are some other things you've learned with your writing since you started, besides that you needed more time?
It's it's structure, I guess. The three-story method really changed a lot on how I view story structure and how I can communicate with other people about story structure. And it's it's the fastest way to get into basically someone else's head and figure out like where the little pieces, where the little keys are for scene construction and kind of having that conversation. So when I'm working with with another person, generally I'm coming up with the outline either through helping them with Abe, we kind of do the outline together, or with Jeff, I write the outline, he writes the scene, then I go back and I do the edits. But I can use that three-story method as a shorthand to see like each little point as we go along the way and see where we can turn it, where we can fix it based off of the overall story structure, where we're headed. So that's really what I've learned the most is this just super simplified version of structure.
Okay, nice. And what software and services do you use?
Well, I wish I could use Scrivener. I really do. I used Scrivener for my own works, but when I work with a co-author, I should say, Scrivener does not work. I use Google Docs. It's the fastest way. And if one of us is in it and the other person just needs to jump in and do some quick edits, like we're both there. Uh, I really like Google Docs. Now, there's something some people have told me, make sure you save it offline because of, it's technically not a physical document, so just fair warning. But that is what I use, Google Docs. That's pretty much it. Pro Writing Aid is the next thing for just making sure my documents are clean before I send them out to someone.
Now, have you looked at Chesson's new Atticus?
I have not.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, it's something new that he just came out with. He originally wanted to replace Vellum
Mm,
because Windows people can't use that well, and Scrivener isn't the easiest to use with the compiling and all that. So, but now Atticus, and I just got it. I'm still trying to find something to use it for, but I've got it on my Windows machine, my Linux laptop, my Android phone, my iOS pad. So, and it's you can have the document shared all over. So it's
okay.
better for co-writing. So I'm still looking into it, and there's still like every other week he comes out with a new email of new functions and features. Because it's still kind of in beta. So
Yeah.
I'm
I
curious.
I ended up using Google Docs mostly for the comfort of working with another person, but I love finding new apps and writing in them and then losing all the work that I did in them because I forget about it.
Right.
But I mean, like I was an early adopter in the Johnny, Sean, and Dave's app that I can't
Story
remember off the top of my head.
story guide or
Story Shop.
something. Story shop.
Story
Yeah.
Shop. Which, I mean, to be honest, I liked it. It worked for me. There were obviously faults to it, but that whole concept worked really well with me for world building. And I haven't really found anything that was similar enough to it. I found some things here and there, but ultimately I ended up back at Google. So I think I like the shiny stuff, but I think Google Docs does it just fine.
Yeah, I actually when I first started writing pulled up Word because that's what I had, and almost immediately I started writing. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I could do this, and I got Scrivener, found it, and
Hmm.
it clicks with me right away. So I'll see what Atticus does too. So, okay, so here's a question: Your Vela series. How are
Hmm.
you marketing that and getting the word out? You said you've got some groups and things, but are you doing anything else to get the word out for that?
Yeah, so we just did a book funnel. Because we figured out a way to put the Velo series in book funnel, and then we did for October a spooky season Velo reads. And we got about 10 different authors and promoted it that way. And I think I saw like a bump in our reads. Definitely could see the click through in that. Um, Other than that, I mean, we do a lot of promotions on the social media, and like Instagram and Twitter are our main ones. And the key to me with like the aspect of working with other people is if you share what they have, usually they share what you have. So, I focus on making sure that I'm bringing a voice to some of those other authors. And then I've seen in response that they also will then share whenever I have a new episode out. So that's really how we've been doing it. We did a couple Facebook ads to start, and Jeff is better at using his newsletter than I am on mine, which is pretty much null and void. I need a better newsletter, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Like it's mostly just been trying to get it word of mouth through social media, through newsletters.
Okay, nice. All right, let's talk about our big topic, which we hinted at community. And it's one of the things you've discovered that
Hmm.
about you to help with your writing. So, when I asked you, what author topic do you want to talk about? And you said community. What were you thinking about? Why do you want to bring out community to everybody else?
Because to me, when I was back in 2015 ish. That's really when I had a moment where I was angry about. I'm gonna do a quick side rail. So in 2015, I took a supervisory skills course, and in that course, we had to write down all the things we didn't have time for. So a lot of people are like, I don't have time for laundry. I don't have time to do the dishes. I don't have time to write. I don't have time to do art. I don't have time to do all these creative things that I like doing. So I had this list and I was like, yeah, I don't have time to do a lot of stuff. And then the guy at the front of the class, he's like, okay, now I want you to, each one of you, to say, instead of I don't have time, I don't want to, and then say all of the things that you wrote down. And I got so mad. I was so angry that I had to say I don't want to write and I don't want to do art. And I was like, that's not what I meant. That's not what I wanted to do. And that was like my wake up call to be like, what you've been doing is not what you like to do, and you need to focus more on what you like to do. So that's when I hit up podcasts, and I ended up like on Rachel Herron's podcast. I found the Horror Writers podcast, which then turned into the Career Author. And I found Johnny, Sean, and Dave. I found Joanna Penn, and I started listening to all these different voices. But really, it was for 4 years that I was just listening to podcasts. I was kind of like reading on craft and trying to figure out like what it is about writing that I really like to do. And I wasn't really getting anywhere in like any sort of rapid pace. Like, I'd do NaNoWriMo, I would get all those words out, but then like, what do I do next? 2019 hit. I went to an event because I was like, okay, JP, like, what's the next step? What do you got to do next? You gotta go out there. You gotta just fake it till you make it. Go be like, yeah, I write. And I'm like, yeah, right, okay. And so I went to this event and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna write the short story. And really what happened is I met an author community that was amazing, that we were chatting on Slack before and after the event. And pretty much like after the event, I felt even more comfortable chatting with them. And then I just kept going to these events, and I kept going and making sure that I was having this communication with different authors. And I feel like I have exponentially grown since the moment I went out and I actually like met other authors. And that was really a wake up call for me to be like, you know what? I feel like I've been told writing is this solitary practice that we all just kind of like hole up in our homes and we just think up things inside of our heads while drinking scotch and,
Which we do.
smoking. Well, I wish I had more scotch, I think. I don't know if I like scotch or not. And while there is a solitary aspect to writing, there is also a social aspect to writing. And I have found that had I not had that, I think I would still be years behind where I am.
Okay. And have you looked at other communities and groups, and they didn't fit you? Why this one? Why didn't other ones work?
So, to me, TASM, the Author Success Mastermind, is built off of a platform of basically anyone is welcome in. It's inclusivity. And also this foundation of three-story method, which to me is the simplest way of getting people to share a common language about story so that people can help other people. So that I can have a conversation with you knowing that you're in the Author Success Mastermind and tell you that, well, when I'm looking at this scene and you're telling me, well, the scene doesn't work, and I can read it and be like, well, your choice could be better, you already are nodding along. You're already like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, and then we can have a better conversation about how that choice can be better. So knowing that I have that community that has that shared language is like significantly better than going into a place that has tens of thousands of people. Your voice gets lost in it, and none of you are sharing the same language. Someone's telling you, well, you've got to do the six plot structure. Someone else is telling you, well, you've got to do the W plot structure, and no one's really sharing their communication. They're just kind of telling you what works for them. And by no means does three-story method, like, no means is that the tell all, but that's the starting point of the conversation. And then those other methods, those other structures can fit in that structure, but it's that shared language that really makes the Author Success Mastermind like my go-to community. I do have other communities, but that's my go-to one.
Got it. And I know for me and for probably a lot of people, you look for critique groups to start with. They have these author groups or whatever at libraries and through Meetup. And I went to several of those, and I haven't found any of those to be that helpful. Usually
Mm-hmm.
get one or two people like overlording on everybody, and here's everything wrong with what you just read, and you don't
Right.
get a lot of back and forth. Whereas in TASM, there's a whole lot of everybody has their own thing that they contribute, and you'll hear from different people depending on your issue at the moment, and everyone
Exactly.
does help a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
Yeah, I think that the next level for the Author Success Mastermind is for those people in that community to start looking at their local communities and start looking at how to restructure that. I think that that's where TASM is headed. I haven't been personally told that per se, but I think that that's the direction it's headed, is how can we as a community that is basically international, we have different people from different parts of the world, but how can we as a community online focus on our local communities to really rise up those authors who may not have access to this online community? And that's really like, that's one thing I would love to do after COVID, which there won't be an after COVID, but after COVID becomes somewhat normalized and more vaccines. Um, but it's something that I would like to do within the community, is to be able to reach out to those that are local and have that conversation and see where that goes.
And so we'll be kind of like rebel cells. We won't know about all the other cells, and
100%.
which fits your government
I
secret
know
agencies.
there's always a theme that comes through in everything.
Right. And for people listening that maybe are sitting at home, because I know I go to some of the author things at the local libraries, and I see authors there, but I never see them anywhere else. And you
Hmm.
talk to them, and that's what they do. They sit at home, they're alone, they go to the couple conferences at the library. And I agree with you that, reach out, find other authors, and if there's nothing in your area, make one. But I know at the local library to me, there's a group that meets, though I think it's mostly senior citizens because it's like 1:30 on Thursday. I'm like, who's going to that one? Uh,
That sounds perfect.
yeah. And then there's up by Jay, there's a bigger library. I know they do a couple groups. They have a whole writing center. And I know on Meetup, when you look around, there's groups that you can find. So, if people are listening, get out there, find the ones online. And you're right, Facebook's probably the first go-to. But then you find things, and nothing against any of those groups, but you find the groups that have like 57,000 people. It's hard to
Hmm.
have a community that way unless it's broken down into subgroups. Uh,
Yeah.
and with Jay's TASM, we've got the main group, but we also recently broke it down. We have subgenres for some of our messages. We have a group that meets on Saturday, and then there's like everybody else is just in the Slack and discussions on everything under the sun.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that there's a special element to critique groups, and really it comes down to, are you there to help someone or are you not? And are the people that are there encouraged to help, or are they there to just state their opinion? Um, and that's why, like in TASM, in the like platinum group or whatever mastermind group, the higher level, the one that meets every Saturday, there used to be, and there still is occasionally, but these analyses where they view our scenes, and Jay leads basically it's a critique, with suggestions on how to improve, but all based off of the same shared language.
Right.
And it really isn't room or space for that critique that comes off as like pompous or whatnot, but it's really a critique as to how to improve the craft and the author themselves. Um, he also had us do a reading in one of them. It was Bandersnatch was the name of the
Yeah.
book, and I really enjoyed it. Um,
I interviewed Diane Glyer. She's going to be on.
oh, excellent!
Yeah.
I'm super excited. Yeah, no, that was a really good book, because it was focused on, back in the day, J.R. Tolkien and
C.S. Lewis and
C.S.
a
Lewis,
few
yeah,
others.
uh, and a few others had this critique group, and it really talked about how, like, even back then, writing wasn't done alone, um, and how they got together and they gave each other these critiques. Now, some of them may have been a little more pompous than others, but it was still critiques that was a community,
Right.
and that's really, like, I feel like that was a good representation of an author community that was successful. And that's an author community that I would love to emulate in person. I've had that wonderful experience online, but I think the next level is finding that in person.
Yeah. And the for the people that aren't in a community, first you got to find one that you feel comfortable with, people you feel comfortable
Hmm.
with. And then the next thing, when every group should have some sort of critiquing or review and feedback. I think I've learned more from reading everyone else's stuff, and especially then listening to Jay or evaluating it, where the three C's are, or however you want to, the beats and whatever else. Because I'm not so uptight about like reading my own stuff, and I can more
Hmm.
naturally see things. But then when my stuff gets evaluated, it makes more sense too when I hear the feedback. So that's the biggest benefit, well, especially when you're first starting.
Yeah. I think too there's a key in like finding out who this group is and what they write, because like I would be looking for some people that are in those commercial genres.
Right.
People that write urban fantasy, people that write various different commercial genres. For me, that's the kind of author that I'm looking for, and then someone who is looking for that kind of structure in the three-story method.
Right. And it is important to find a group that has at least some people writing the same as you. Because, like in TASM, we've got everything. We've got the romance and comedy and sci-fi and everything else, and that's just lawn. But the one group I was in, there were two writers. They're both thriller writers, and they would give almost the same advice to everybody that read something. And after a while, and as I got better, I realized this isn't completely always right. For example, in the horror genre, and I've talked to Jay about this, you don't always want to put the giveaway on the first page.
Yep,
You need a build up for horror to work well. And a good build up is what will attract a horror person. But a thriller, you want the dead body in paragraph two. So
exactly.
you can't give that thriller advice to the horror author. And again, these were things I wouldn't have known and thought about until I was in several communities and started hearing and you know and podcasts, are almost they're like a asynchronous community because you can hear a lot of good things and it gets you started at least.
Yep, definitely.
So, all right. Well, JP, this has been a great talk.
Yeah.
Not our normal Saturday. um, but before we go, do you have any last minute advice, something you'd tell new authors?
Hmm. Something I would tell new authors. So, I guess what I would say to JP back in 2015.
There you go. Good
Um,
one. Yeah.
it's that don't give up. You are going to write a lot. At least I wrote a lot that may never see the light of day, and that's okay. And I think that really get out there more. Consider going to small writing events. um, I could not suggest the world building events from J Thorn and Zach Bohannon any more than possible. But really, like the key to those events are, 20-ish people, 20-ish authors that are there for a shared goal. They're there to write, to create this story world that they're going to write short stories in. And having that as a platform to get to know other authors, to get to know how to write the way that you want to write and kind of see the way that other people want to write. Like there is something about community that really expanded my worldview for writers. And it's something that I would just really encourage people to do. Um, there has to be events near you, regardless of if it's, I don't think you have to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars to do these sorts of things. I think that there's a way that you could find something nearby. Um, so that's just my recommendation is to get out there. Even if that means like responding to podcasts, encouraging comments on podcasts that you're listening to for writers, finding those communities and communicating more, getting on Zoom calls, something along those lines that you are in direct communication with other authors.
Agreed. And obviously, you mentioned the world building events. That's through Jay's Author Success Mastermind. I'll put a link in the show notes. We're both
Hmm.
part of that. We both gravitated to it because it was very comfortable. It's a great community. And I know Jay is really making a push through this year and next. So I'll put show notes. Everybody listening, check it out. And the world building events that you mentioned, which is great because a little preview, we've got a panel we're going to do for this podcast of a bunch of us that went to a couple of these world events. And I think honestly, Jay is very unique. I don't know if anybody else is doing anything like this. There's conferences with talks, but this is a total unique thing that he does to help that. We'll talk about that on the panel more, but yeah, I agree. The two I've gone to have been some of the best inspiration next to the Career Author Summit.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if no one else is doing them and it's just him and Zach, then maybe there should be more, not competition, but healthy room for others.
Well, I mean, if they're only doing a couple a year and they're only taking 15 or so people, the word gets out, there's going to be lots of room. And I thought, because you're close to me, and I don't know who else is in there, I thought we should do an informal get together. Just find some midpoint of 3 or 4 people and all get together at a coffee shop for a simple, I guess, world building where we, come up with some characters or something, and then we all have something we write as a co-author thing almost and put it together.
Yeah.
But I haven't worked that out. I'm way too busy lately, but there's
that
room.
would be fun.
There's room for other things like that. And I think putting the community with the world building events is super fantastic. I haven't heard anybody say, yeah, well, this was a waste of my time at all. It's always been super. And you missed the vampires in New Orleans. Marianne got on a float. Did you hear that? You didn't hear that?
I saw a lot of video of her parade and
she just called them up and connived her way into one of the floats.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, it was pretty great. I mean, it was a nice topper. And she was in a zombie run, and Jay was too. So,
yep, I heard.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you taking some time tonight. I had to twist your arm to get you on here because I wanted to hear from you. But it's because you've got things coming out that weren't out yet. So hopefully this will release very close to the time those are out. So that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
All right, JP, I appreciate it. Have a good evening, sir.
See you later.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.